All right. So I'm back. All right. And I have a interesting topic to talk about. And I remember, uh, you know, getting a notification from a social media group that I no longer go to. And The subject talked about a woman was talking about how her husband, right, will only agree to um, this is a two people who are not Christian, and this is a group I was into before I came back to the faith, and basically the subject was polygamy, and basically she was posting about how her husband won't agree to it. He'll only agree with her sleeping with uh, women, okay, and people in the forum were saying that she should divorce him. Uh, Mind you, this is a woman who's a wife, and she wants her husband to conform to an alternative lifestyle that he doesn't want, or the fact that he's only willing to submit to the fact of her dating the same sex of women. Now, you know, I'm a Christian, right? So I just said, why don't you just humble yourself and stick with the man you with and uh, drop the idea of being having other men and going that route. And I got attacked for that opinion. It was amusing, and then I just left the group. Okay, had that didn't see a purpose in that. I just wanted to ask a question: why doesn't she just humble herself? He's not into that lifestyle. Enjoy the marriage instead of complicating it with multiple partners. Okay, and you know, guess what happened? People started suggesting divorce. Very interesting. Let's get into this topic anyway. All right, I'll bring it up. Brought it up already. Okay, here we go. What is polyamory and how does it work? Polygamy. We're gonna get deep into this, and you're gonna see um, why this is just something that is sad to say. Um, Even in the Christian community, it's been affected. Let's just say the devil is working really hard in this avenue as well. People express love in different ways, and no relationship is the same, which is why polyamory and the ability to have a relationship with more than one person has become an increasingly common topic of discussion. However, although most people have heard the term polyamory, not everyone is clear on the meaning or the logistics of how these non monogamous relationships work. Polyamory, which is defined as loving more than one person, is often mistaken as considered as the same as an open relationship, which is not always the case. Right. Okay. In reality, polyamorous relationships are unique in that they are comprised of multiple loving partnerships. Right. What is a polyamorous relationship? A polyamorous relationship is a type of non-monogamous relationship that differs from other relationships in that multiple people are involved, not just two. According to New York City relationship expert and author Susan Winter, sorry, a polyamorous relationship is often characterized by a primary couple that openly and with mutual consent engage with other romantic partners. These sexual liaisons may be enacted as a couple or independently. However, even polyamorous relationships differ by couples. For some people, polyamorous relationships involves being in a relationship with multiple people, but having one main partner. For others, polyamory is the ability of being in two completely separate relationships. Fundamentally, philosophy, the fundamental philosophy of polyamory is that sexual love shouldn't be confined to the strictures of monogamy, but expressed freely and fully, Winter told The Independent. Another tenet of polyamory is that both individuals know of their partner's lovers. Let's be honest here. Due to the sinful nature of man, people are not going to be honest, especially if they see somebody's attractive and they feel they're in a polyamorous relationship. Some people are not going to be honest. They're going to do what they want to do, and they're going to follow their spiritual father, the devil, and it's going to do. It's they're going to rationalize it and say, "Do what thou wilt." That's what's going to be the song in their heart and mind. The song of their spiritual father, the devil. Do what thou wilt. Okay. How does polyamorous relationship work? Because polyamorous relationships do not follow the mainstream societal construct of relationships. Logistics are often cause for confusion to outsiders. Hmm, outsiders. For a polyamorous relationship to be successful, everyone involved must be open and honest about what they want and need out of the union. While the boundaries in polyamory are different from monogamous relationships, they do still exist, whether by defining who can enter into a relationship or putting limits on how much time can be spent on each. Are you serious? People are gonna um, so easily just go against this or just break these rules by accident. Come on now, just come on. Maintaining open communication is integral to polyamorous relationships so that issues don't arise. However, jealousy can still manifest even if you are open with your partner or partners. Of course, because people want to be the center of your relationship. Okay? That's just normal. Okay? That's just how it is. I mean, God-given instinct. Like Jesus wants to be the center of your relationship. He wants all of you. It's the same reflection. You want the person you're with, you know, to have, you want to be their center of attention, and the same in return. And when you add another person into it, that's when everything turns a mess. Winter told us it's hard enough to get a relationship right with just one partner. Imagine two or more. The more people involved, the more challenging the tides of emotional experience. On one hand, polyamory removes the secrecy and betrayal of trust that surrounds an affair, she said. On the other hand, managing compersion, finding joy from a loved one's pleasure in another, and this is the stumbling block that trips up most polygamists. You can still have affairs and trust and betrayal in a polygamous relationship. Just one person just have a partner on the side that neither your neither partner knows about. And the thing is, women could get pregnant, men could bring home an STD. All of this could be a one big huge mess. Okay. Polyamory can work if both individuals are completely emotionally and physiologically on board with the concept. Even so, it's challenging to eradicate the insecurity that sparks jealousy, Winter said. Of course, there's going to be jealousy because you have to be committed, all right, and committed to one person. How is polyamory different from an open relationship? Often, polyamory is considered the same as an open relationship. However, that is not necessarily the case. Although both are considered non monogamous, in polyamorous relationship, it is not completely about sex, whereas open relationship is typically defined as having sex outside sexual relationships that do not form into relationships. Seriously? Let's read that again. In polyamorous relationships, it is not completely about sex, whereas an open relationship is typically defined as having outside sexual relationships that do not form into relationships. That makes no sense. People who've cheated on their spouses, or have sex outside of their marriages sometimes develop feelings for each other. And it turns out to be a full blown relationship on the side. So this is just a bunch of lies right here. With polyamory, the point is to have multiple relationships, as love and emotional connections are the driving forces. Who enters into a polyamorous relationship? Anyone can become involved in a polyamorous relationship as long as the knowledge of what doing so entails is understood. While polyamorous people do tend to be more open, it does not mean that they are automatically involved in sex with multiple people or that their sexual preferences are fluid. Wow. This is wow. The lies is just right. This completely goes against the truth of human nature. To enter into a polyamorous relationship, one must be open about their needs and wants. Although polyamory means being involved or loving multiple people, it takes a supreme trust, communication, and intentional clarity, according to Winter. Right. Now, we're going to look at sad thing is like how it seeped into the church. Let's get into it. All right. So here we go. Dun dun dun. Why Christians need to think about polyamory. Oh, here we go. Told you, man. Devil was working overtime in this. Supreme overtime on this part. So here we go. Okay. I often get asked, what's the next discussion that Christians need to have about sexuality and gender? My immediate answer is polyamory through the morality of sex with robots is a close second. Well, I already did a video on why that is dangerous. Polyamory is often confused with polygamy, but they are actually quite different. For one, polygamy is a type of marriage, while polyamory is not necessarily marital. Also, polygamy also almost always entails a man taking more than one wife, while polyamory is much more egalitarian. Polyamory is open to any mixture of number and genders, so it is just as common for a man to be in a relationship with several women as it is for women to be in love with several men, writes Mike Hatcher. Okay, remember I told you about that post that I got a notification about that I joined in the back City that I noticed it and I saw the title of the post. That was a married couple and a married woman who posted that in a group. And she was mad that her husband said, you know what? Um, I only will accept you sleeping with other women. Okay. So this was a woman that wanted polyamory in a marriage. Okay. And she was mad that her husband um, said, you know what? I'll only accept you sleeping with other women. Okay. He's wrong. Okay. He is wrong. He is wrong. Okay. I'm not for that. But what I'm trying to get you to understand, what I'm trying to put here, no sane straight man is going to want his woman sleeping with other men. Okay. And that will infuriate him. And he will just be, you're not doing that. Okay. And he'll set up um some boundaries. He said, listen, you're not going to sleep with other men, but you'll sleep with other women. That's as far as I go. Now, he's not into that. Okay. And the woman wants to force him, try to find ways to force him to change his mind, to give her what she wants, which is the ability to have multiple partners with men. Okay. And we all know the thing about soul ties and everything like that. We all know this is just a recipe for disaster. Okay. So guess what? These people act like there's going to be some rules and you know it's going to be all nice and dandy. No, like I said, the human nature, when it comes to what they want, they don't care, and they follow the spiritual natural father, which is the devil, and say, "Do what thou wilt." And the Satan is like steal, kill, and destroy. So guess what? What was this woman wanting? She was willing to destroy her marriage to get what she wants. And there are people, fellow Satanists, because I'm going to be honest with you, because um, in my younger years, when I was a Christian, I used to study a lot about um, stuff about the devil. I studied about how how he was evil and how the reality is you don't have to join covens to be a Satanist. All you have to do is just live a life that's against God. That's it. Bam, you're a Satanist. Okay? Worship another God, do what you want to do. You're a Satanist. Okay? And that's what that wife wanted to do. Okay? She wanted to go against natural order of things. And she was looking for people for advice to do it. Okay? They were telling her you should leave him, you should divorce him. And when I put up the idea, you know what? Let this go. This is your marriage. Let it go. Okay? I get attacked because guess what? I said something that was godly, that was rational, that was, you know, people say you should divorce. And I basically asked a question, okay, you want to go for divorce. And what are you going to tell the judge? That your husband doesn't want to, agree to your alternative lifestyle? What are you going to tell your family? Is that the hill? Is that what you want to do? Is that what you want to do? And this is the days we are living in. Okay, these are the days that are living, and I guarantee you, I would not be surprised if this was brought up in church and you had a church that was okay with that, and a person says this is wrong, this is ungodly, this is wrong, this is sin. They will try to hammer him or her with the Old Testament, oh, gosh, and say nonsense to try to suppress the truth and unrighteousness. Okay, let's keep going. Polyamory is also different from swinging or open relationships, though they do overlap. Oh, they're different, but they do overlap. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Open relationships are polyamorous, but not every polyamorous relationship is an open relationship. Sex and relationship therapist Rainy Devine says an open relationship is one where one or both partners have a desire for sexual relationships outside of each other, and polyamory is about having intimate, loving relationships with multiple people, and that's the key. Polyamory is not just about sex, it includes love, romance, and emotional commitment between more than two people. That is not possible. For some Christians, polyamory seems so extreme and rare that there's no need to talk about it. It's wrong, it's ridiculous, and no need to defend why it's wrong or think about pro poly arguments. Just quote Genesis 2 and move on. But hopefully, we've learned the hard way from our rather late to discussion approach with the LGBTQ questions that it's better to get ahead of the game and construct a view rather than just fall back into frantic reactive mode when the issue is full bloom. Uh-huh. For other Christians, polyamory is considered when being used in a slippery slope argument against same-sex relationships. If we allow gay relationships, why not poly relationships? While I agree that the ethical logic used to defend same-sex relationships cannot exclude poly relationships, merely using poly as a slippery slope argument is inadequate. We actually need to think through plural love, as it's sometimes called, and do so in gracious, thoughtful, and biblical manner. There is no biblical manner to have this. All right, this stuff will destroy marriages, leave kids open to abuse. Okay, all right. This is not this is not something to do. It's not conducive with the Bible. All right, it's just wrong. Polyamory is much more common than some people think. According to one estimate, as many as 5% of Americans are currently in relationships involving consensual monogamy, non-monogamy, which is about the same as those who identify as LGBTQ. Another recent study published in a peer-reviewed journal found that 1 in 5 Americans have found in a consensual non-monogamous relationship at least some point in their life. Another survey showed that nearly 70% of non-religious Americans between the ages of 24 to 35 believe that consensual polygamy is okay, even if it's not their cup of tea. What about church folks? What about church-going folks of the same age? Roughly 24% said they were fine. You go to church doesn't mean they're Christian. Okay, going to church doesn't make you a Christian. Why would anyone engage in polyamory? Does it foster jealousy? Can these relationships really last? Aren't children who grow up in poly families bound to face relational harm? Sorry. These are all valid questions, one which have been addressed by advocates of polyamory. At least one argument says that people pursue polyamorous relationships because it's their sexual orientation. Oh, wow. They really have no other valid option, they say. They're not monogamously oriented, they're poly. No, they just don't want to submit to the natural order of things. They want to have a free for all, and they want to do what they want to do without any restrictions. And that's it. That's it in a nutshell. They're not willing to discipline themselves, not to cheat, not that's it. When you want to go against the natural order of things when it comes to relationships and being monogamous, it's just basically meaning you saying you lack discipline. Or someone says, um, I like to curse. You lack discipline in not restraining yourself from cursing. Okay. I'm a cursor. That just means you lack control in that area. You don't want to. That's it. I never forget watching Dan Savage, a well known sex columnist, swat the hornet's nest when he made the audacious claim that poly is not an orientation. Savage is no bastion for conservative ideals, and he himself admits to having nine different extramarital affairs with his husband's consent. This is why it was fascinating to see him get chastised for making such an outlandish statement that polyamory is not a sexual orientation. It's not. No one's born, you know, look, sexual orientation. It's not something you're born with. Okay. Is there any merit to the claim that polyamory is a sexual orientation? It all depends on our understanding of sexual orientation. How do you define it? See, this is what I'm saying. This is how do you define it? Okay, it's all relative. How do you define it? What do you see about it? How do you measure it, prove it, disprove it? What exactly is sexual orientation? Stay tuned for a later blog on this. It's not as if we take a blood sample to determine whether somebody is gay, straight, or poly. Sexual orientation is much, much messier than most people realize. No, it's not. It's pretty simple. Okay. You're born a man, you're born a boy, you're gonna be a man. You're born a woman, you're born a girl, you're gonna be a woman. Okay. Poly is something you choose. Okay, it's a lifestyle you choose. Just like being gay or lesbian is something you choose. That's it. Celebrities, of course, have suggested that polyamory is an orientation when they are talking about monogamy being unnatural. You always notice it just flip things on their head. It's like some sort of Gnostic thing going on. Like God is bad and following his rules is bad, but the devil is good and his rules are good, even though he only has one rule, and that's do what thou wilt. Okay, here we go. Well, they talk about monogamy being unnatural, or that some people are just wired for more love than one partner can provide. Pop culture isn't the only advocate, though. Scholars are also starting to argue that polyamory should be considered a sexual orientation. As early as 2011, Ann Tweedy, assistant professor at Hamline University School of Law, wrote a lengthy 50-page article in a peer-reviewed journal where she argued that polyamory should be considered a sexual orientation. Tweedy writes, polyamory shares some of the important attributes of sexual orientation as traditionally understood, so it makes conceptual conceptual sense for polyamory to be viewed as part of the sexual orientation. Polyamory as a sexual orientation. Stuff is crazy, man. Logic is familiar. Those who pursue polyamorous relationships can't help it. They can't help it, huh? It's who they are. It's how God has created them to be. Well, okay. It would be wrong to pursue a relationship like a monogamous one that goes against their orientation. No, I am not retorting to age old slippery slope argument. That is where gay relationships will lead. I'm simply summarizing a growing opinion expressed in both pop culture and academia. Academia, that's the problem with these colleges. Some of them, most of them, okay, they are, you know, socialist, left wing geared, all right, and they don't, you know, they're basically a free for all. They swear they're so smart, but they're actually stupid at the same time. Okay, that's where it's going. Okay, this is where you get the socialists sometimes with these universities, very anti-God, but their life, I guarantee you, is a mess. All right, and they want your life to be a mess too. Polyamory might be a Newsweek article suggested 10 years ago. The next sexual revolution. And several of my pastor friends tell me that it's becoming more common to have people who identify as poly asking about the church's view on the matter and if they will be accepted and affirmed. Why do you have to be accepted and affirmed if it's a sexual orientation? Sexual orientation, you shouldn't be have to be worried about being you know affirmed or accepted because it's a sexual orientation, right? You were born that way, right? Why would you care about someone what they have to say? See, this is just a joke. This is just a bunch of song and dance and semantics. You know, you can't, you know it's a lie because you have to try and force people to believe this. You know it's a lie, so you're trying to. Will I be accepted? Will I be judged? It's the same thing with this. It's the same thing with the homosexuals. They come out and now they get cried because they got judged by a group, a religious group that their creed and religion says that they condemn it. Why would you want to be around those type of people? Why would you want to be around Christians? Why would you want to if their belief system says homosexuality, lesbianism, and trans get an LGBT whatever alphabet group lifestyle is bad? Why be around them? Live your life. But you know why? Because the words in that book is true. And they're trying to suppress the truth. Trying to come in as fake victims. You're not a victim. You're a willing participant, and you want to have people feel sorry for you. And if you can't get them to feel sorry for you, you'll go and find other people to come back and bully the church, bully the pastor, bully anybody that has any audacity to challenge your lifestyle. And this, while with a whole lot more alternative lifestyles are coming down the tailpipe. Pedophilia, you already have big time professors having TED talks saying pedophilia is a sexual orientation instead of being labeled as a mental illness and a crime that needs to be punished. Okay. This is what's happening. And this is the last stage. I think we are in the last stage when it comes to this. These are abstract questions, and yet the discussion is still young enough so that Christian pastors and leaders have some time to construct a robust, compassionate, seriously, thoughtful response to the question. Compassion is telling them, listen, you're wrong. You need to repent and come to Jesus. God made you to be with a woman and one woman only. God made you, if it's a woman, to be one man and one man only. If you don't like that, be celibate for the rest of your life and ask God to change your heart and mind by being born again. That's it. Okay? What's your current stance on people who are poly? But more positively, we have time to construct a truly Christian vision for monogamy, if indeed that is the only truly Christian vision. It is. It is. That's it. You could only be monogamous in the kingdom of God. If you can't handle that, go somewhere else. But they don't want to go somewhere else because, you know, they'll get mad that they got rejected. And the reality is why they won't go somewhere else is because they got convicted with the truth. And now they want to crush it and anybody else who's in their way. That's the truth of the matter. Okay. Now, we're going to look at the biblical reason why they had polygamy. Okay. Went into poly, but might as well get down and expose this all. After all, Christians are to expose the works of darkness. So here we go. Focus on the family. Biblical perspectives on polygamy and polyamory. Why can't I have a biblical based family with multiple partners? Most of the great men of the Bible, Abraham, Jacob, David, and Solomon, had many wives. Given your ministry's strong commitment to the scriptures, I can't see why you're against things like polygamy and polyamory. Consider myself a polygamous. Ooh, breathe. A polyamorous Christian. I love several different women, and they're all. Yes. I love several. I love several different women, and there's no reason we can't build a strong family together on a foundation of consensual, ethical, and responsible non-monogamy. When did the change occur that established marriage as a covenant relationship between one woman, and one man? I I'm going to be very honest with you. I'd be very worried for people who are polyamorous in this type of climate that we're in, with the shutdowns and possibly the new world order kicking into swing. I just, would feel very worried for people like that who are in polyamorous relationships. And if your finances are affected by this, you know, um, pandemic and the possible threat of World War III, uh, I would I would worry, because the fact that those poor kids are going to be affected. Okay, businesses could fall apart, families could be torn apart. It's going to be ugly. There never was any change. God intended that marriage should work in this way from the very beginning. Then the rib which the Lord God, excuse me, had taken from man, he made it into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Genesis chapter 2, verses 22 to 24. As these verses show very clearly, monogamy was inherent to God's plan for humanity from the moment of creation. Pretty much, God didn't take two ribs from Adam and give him two women, and these are the women that are going to be for you, Adam. And he said, bones of. He said, these. This is now the bones of my flesh, two ribs and flesh of. He didn't say that. God gave him one woman to one man. That man was Adam. You are correct, of course, to point out that several of Old Testament patriarchs and kings had a number of wives. What you have failed to notice is that the Bible never really condones this practice. It simply describes it as part of the lifestyle of a typical ancient Middle Eastern chieftain. The Israelites probably picked up the custom of polygamy from their pagan neighbors. If you study these biblical instances of polygamy in detail, you discover that none of them is portrayed in a positive light. In every case, the practice of keeping multiple wives results in problems for the king or patriarch in question. In some cases, those problems are very serious indeed. If you doubted this, take a closer look at the lives of Abraham, Jacob, King David. Yeah, if you look into the life of Abraham, right? He was supposed to believe God to that God would bring him a son in his old age with Sarah, and instead, Sarah lost faith and said, "Abraham, go have sex with Hagar, our maidservant, and have a child with her." And look what happened. It caused a lot of beef, and a lot of arguments and strife. And Abraham had to send Hagar away with his child Ishmael. And that broke his heart, but he had to do it. Okay. Now, I don't know much about Jacob, but King David, um, you can see that the fact of the matter is and Solomon, with kings, period. Okay, when they ever practice this type of lifestyle, having multiple wives and multiple kids, the problem is the fact that there was intrigue, there was strife, and sometimes full-out war for the crown. You could even see it in Middle East, in other countries, right, who practice this, right? Even in Europe and even in African tribes, when they practice polygamy, there's always a chance of warfare breaking out, jealousy, intrigue among the children born from different mothers, and this is what happens. And I guarantee you, when you practice this type of um, lifestyle, you're gonna have problems. But the kids are gonna have strife. Women are gonna feel, and every woman is gonna look out for their kid first. They don't care if that kid was a half brother of another or from another woman. Their kid comes first. That's a maternal instinct of uh, mothers. Okay, it's it's, it's that's what's gonna happen. Solomon is best known and most extreme example of this principle. In the end, it was his many wives who led him into idolatry and destroyed his faith in the Lord. Add to the fact that polygamy had all but disappeared in Israel by the time of Christ. Paul's instructions on Titus 1 and 1 Timothy chapter 3 specify that deacons and elders must be husbands of one wife, probably don't have anything to do with polygamy per se. Instead, they grow out of the problem that is far more familiar to most of us as modern Americans: divorce and what has sometimes been called serial polygamy. Romans were notorious for this type of thing. It seems that, yes, they were. It seems that their customs and habits had rubbed off on many of the occupied people of the empire. This is part of the background for the question about the resurrection that the Sadducees and brought to Jesus in Mark chapter 12, verses 18 to 27. But enough of the historical perspective. Let's get back to the heart of your question. The real issue here is your claim to be a Christian who loves several different women and who wants to build a family on the basis of responsible non monogamy. That's an extremely risky proposition as far as we're concerned. Sorry. Do you really believe you can make it work? Along with the biblical and theological difficulties, your plan has some serious practical, legal, and logistical flaws. Yes, because if it don't work out, those women are going to clean you out. They're going to go to divorce court and they're going to ask for alimony and they're going to ask for child support. What's more, it raises big questions about your understanding of the exclusivity of sexual love, which the biblical writers often use as a symbol for the exclusivity of our relationship with God. Marriage is a representation of Christ's relationship with the church. Okay, that is why you cannot. Um, Divorce is forbidden. Okay, in the Christian faith, and remarriage is forbidden. It's labeled as adultery and will send you to hell after death, because Christ has an undying love for his church and a commitment to his church. When his church acts the fool, he doesn't dump her and get a new one. Okay, he may separate from her, but he would plead with her to come back. All right. From further understanding of divorce and remarriage, read about Hosea and read about. You can see that that story, it reflects the permanence of marriage. In short, we think it might be a good idea for you to sit down and have a serious discussion with someone about the personal motive behind your polyamorous designs. With that in mind, we invite you to call and speak with one of our pastors. I'm sorry, but the thing is like it's basically a fool's journey to say that you think you could love all these multiple women and be married to them all. Okay, and nothing will go wrong. The kids won't get jealous, and you'll have kids. That even complicates even more things. The situation. Okay, the situation is just waiting to just get worse. Okay, that's just how it is. All right. Now you have women who are like, oh, I want to be polyandry, like have multiple men, and they want to. We live in a culture they say like, if a if a man could do it, a woman could do it too, type of thing, which is foolishness because there are things that men and women cannot. You know, it just doesn't work. Okay, but I'll let someone else explain this. Person put it perfectly, perfectly, and I'm gonna let him explain this. I'm gonna let him explain this right off the bat. Here we go.
What up, y'all? It's your man, Uncle American. Y'all ain't never gonna learn. Y'all should listen to your uncle, Uncle American.
Okay, here we go.
So you remember this couple with four dudes and one lady, and you know there was arguments online about well, if men can have multiple wives, women should be able to have multiple husbands. And one of the number one arguments that always comes up is paternity of the children. And so now we have a situation where this guy, Ethan Balcom, is charged with aggravated child abuse after a 5 week old girl suffered multiple injuries, police said. Now I'm gonna before I even read this, because I know some of you you got the attention span of a TV commercial, and so you're not gonna get all the way to the end of the article. Let me just say this: women having multiple husbands and then a child coming into play is never going to work. Having multiple husbands is not going to work anyway, just because of the vicious jealousy of men. But to top it off, when a kid comes into play, that kid has no security and no safety in that relationship, in that family. Do you know why? Because there's no guarantee of paternity of that child to any of them in a relationship. And yes, whether we like it or not, I know guys don't like to be labeled as violent, but we have the capacity for violence. And if there's no emotional attachment to that child because you're like, I don't know whose kid it is, it might not be mine, it might be mine, I don't care, that kid's not going to be safe. Now, the same doesn't apply when man has multiple women because when all those kids are his, what's he going to do? He's going to protect them. He's going to take care of them because he has assured paternity of those children. And the women aren't going to give a damn about the other kid as long as her kid is taken care of also. So if the man's doing his stuff and handling his business and taking care of both of his families or all of his families, however many women he has, those children are taken care of. The women have zero incentive to attack the child of another woman. Unless, of course, she feels that resources are being, allocated incorrectly and unfairly and unjustly, and then it actually starts to impinge upon her lifestyle. Then of course it makes sense that I'm saying it makes sense from a logical standpoint. I'm not saying it's okay, but it makes sense that she would then maybe take action to try and reduce the number of other children he has with other women, not her own, in order to increase the amount of resources available to herself and her offspring. But let's get into this article. A 22-year-old Westside Jacksonville man told officers he needed to tell the truth on March 17, according to his arrest report. While much of the report about Ethan Bishop Balcom's charge of aggravated child abuse has been redacted, one line is not. He stated he believed he heard a pop during the occurrence. So he was putting some hands on this kid pretty heavily. And damn, he heard a pop. I mean, you just got to imagine the anger this guy's feeling. We're going to get further into this. The 5 week old girl's grandmother gave more details in an email to the Times Union saying that the baby suffered a broken leg, arm, ribs, and skull fractures. Apparently, the child is bleeding on the brain also. I am so distraught that words cannot describe, the grandmother said. Oh, the horror of all this. I'm so overwhelmed with pain, heartache, and sorrow over this. I mean, you figure grandma's old enough to know better and would have warned the girl that, like, hey, this is a bad idea. Having a kid with some guy who doesn't know who his kid is and they're living with four other guys or three other guys. How's this going to turn out well? Grandma and granddaughter are both idiots, obviously. She said the baby is expected to recover without any permanent damage. Alhamdulillah, because it's not the kid's fault that the parents are idiots. Malcolm remains behind bars with $25,000 bail. So I'm going to get into some details. They said she has, wow, geez, I didn't read that part. baby has broken rib injuries to her lungs, liver, and multiple brain bleeds. Jeez, this guy went to town on this kid. Um, the baby had been physically abused with a minimum of 3 attacks. So Balcom, this is the point I want to get to. Balcom told the responding detective that he was getting frustrated due to his inability to get any sleep while babysitting. At some point, something happened that was blacked out in the report. He said he heard the pop. The baby briefly ceased crying, then cried later, he said. So this guy's babysitting a kid, probably doesn't believe it's his. The kid's being a kid, screamy, colicky, and all this type of stuff. And him not having any sort of like assurance of paternity. What does he do? While she's all banging the guy or some other guy or one of the 3 guys or all 3 of the guys while he's babysitting, getting increasingly frustrated and angry at the idea of taking care of a kid that isn't his own while the woman he wants to bang is out banging 3 other guys, or one of them, or all of them. What does he do? He takes it out on the kid. And his excuse, I couldn't get any sleep. Well, here's the thing. A guy who's attached to his child because he knows it's his child will have patience for his child when it's screaming, even if he can't get sleep. So women, no, you can't do it too. Because even if there's not a child involved, eventually that guy who attacked the kid is eventually going to attack you. It's a simple fact. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before one of those guys freaks out and he hacks you to pieces, buries you in the backyard or something. So no, just because men can do it, we can do it too. No, you can't. No, you can't. Let me tell you something. Guys can get angry and jealous, and it's biological, and you can't get rid of it. Look at those lame dudes in that photo, and you know what? Those lame dudes are very dangerous to you as a woman. Maybe not to other men, but to you, absolutely. 500, 600, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, that guy, he was like some sadistic soldier working for some king back in the days, torturing people in a basement. Ladies, leave the polygyny alone. Leave it to the men. It's men off American about.
All right. Okay. Here's another one. Going through with this one. Okay. Here's another one. I'm gonna put this one up too. All right. Because it's basically showing the fact that, there was disastrous results when you practice this. Okay. Now, what you see, okay, polygamy was for other tribes and cultures when they practiced it. It was for the provision for women, okay, who probably lost their men in war and stuff like that. Didn't have a father that could be a role model to the son, like a grandpa. So it was a way to give women that, okay, stability. Women, were not, polyandry didn't help women, okay, having multiple husbands, okay, and then having kids, by different men. That doesn't help, because men are only going to support the kid that's theirs, and then you want to pass off that kid to a man that is not their kid. What do you think is going to happen? That man is not going to have any love or affection for that kid. And that's what happened in that story that was just told to you. He harmed that kid. Okay. And that's just basically it. And you notice that some of these women who want that type of lifestyle, it's it's women who, are rebellious, and, some of them, they may have a mental illness, or some of them they're just naturally defiant to patriarchy or the natural order of things. And they're into feminism. Okay. You notice that. You'll notice that a lot. Okay. And some, in the black community say, "Oh, there's no good black men." No, that's not true. That's not true. There are good black men out there, but the thing is like you probably don't uh you don't fit into that bracket to get them. You uh don't um you don't fit into those men who are patriarchal. You're too much. You're a feminist, and you are too woke. You're too new age, and you don't want to submit to. See, that's the thing. Patriarchy comes from God, all right. And when we come to Jesus, we have to submit to Him, because spiritually we will be the we have the place of the church, which is the wife, and He's the husband, okay. And you have to submit. That's the framework of the marriage, okay. Husbands, love your wife, okay, and lay down your life for your wife, okay. Christ laid down His life for His church, okay. Wives, submit to your husband and everything as unto the Lord. The church is to submit to the Lord, all right. And in that is the formula to be with a good man. And a lot of women were raised without fathers, and or were raised in a very liberal environment, so they don't want that. They hate that. Okay, there are good men, but you're not willing to conform to that. Okay, and I'm going to put this one on why polygamy is bad for the black community. Here we go.
Polygyny is the only form of poly that was being incorporated for the sake of community. What do I mean by that? Polygyny is the only form of poly that's been incorporated for the sake of family. Polygyny traditionally would be incorporated for multiple reasons, but let's just say the men great in the village greatly outnumbered, or the women in the village greatly outnumbered the men. The men went to war, died off, came back from war. The women in the village greatly outnumbered the men, so that every woman would have her own husband, or every woman would have access to a husband, and every child that may have been left fatherless would have access to a positive father figure. Polygamy would be incorporated, right? So that they would have a positive male figure in the home for the children, and so that women wouldn't be left to fend for themselves. So polygyny traditionally was incorporated for the sake of providing for the woman, bringing a mutual benefit to all the parties involved. Okay, so polygyny is the only form of poly that's been incorporated for the sake of community and family. Even when you look in the Old Testament in the Bible, I don't know what the Bible, that's what the Bible says, that traditionally they used to, if a brother died off and he had a family and wife, then the brother a lot of times was supposed to take on that other wife and those kids, so that the wife would left to fend for herself. So you even see it in the Bible, right? So that's some of the issues that we face right now in the black community. A lot of black women who desire to have a black man, a good black man. There's not enough good black men to go around in the black community right now. So, what you?
I don't believe that. Okay, there are, but like I said before, all right, a lot of these women do not want to conform to what is to what is good, and good and righteousness comes from Christ. And a lot of these women do not want to submit to Christ. They'll submit to a pastor, they'll submit to a deacon, a deaconess, they'll submit to anything within the church except Jesus. Okay. And they don't want that. And this is a lie saying there are no good black men. There are good black men out there in the black community. Some have probably left because they understand that the black community is very liberal minded, and that is what they want. Okay, they do not want to they don't want to conform to what the Bible says what a good man is. Okay. And it's that's their problem. Okay. They want to listen to what the rap videos say what a good man is. They want to listen to what liberal politicians what a good man is. Okay. That's what they want to submit to. Okay. And that's their going to be their downfall. Unfortunately, that's how the game's going to be played, and Satan's going to win that because he's going to start creating lies, within their minds, whispering lies of what a good man is. And this is when poly will look more favorable because poly means I could have as much as I want, no restrictions. Or polyandry, well, I could have more than one man. Okay, I could do it all by myself. All right. That's what they're looking for. Okay. And I don't believe what this person is saying. Okay. But we'll continue.
Find a lot of times is when women find a good black man, they're like, man, all the good men are taking it. A lot of times they go steal a black man from a family, or they go like, well, she can't just have it to herself. I'm gonna go ahead and get some of that too, right? So you get a lot of women.
There are good black men out there. They're called, but they would be considered lames or Bible thumpers. Okay. And a lot of these women from the black community do not want that. That's just the truth.
Trying to go steal, a man because there's not enough good men to go around. If you count black men, I'm talking about the black community now. If you count all the black men that are in prison, black men who are homosexual, black men who just ain't no good. They don't know how to hold down a job. They don't know how to provide. They don't have strong, dominant, masculine male genes. They don't have the ability to lead. There's very few good black men around for a good black woman who wants a good black man. So polyandry on a mass scale would attribute to this problem. It would add to this problem, right? Because there's already not enough good black men to go around. And now, if one woman starts taking on more husbands, then it's going to add to the problem that there's already not enough good black men to go around for the women that's here now. So polyandry is not community based; it's selfish based. It's only for women to get what they want out of it and be able to have multiple husbands.
Exactly.
It's really not thinking on a community based level. Secondly, like in polygyny, it generally works best when the male is the predominant provider for both of the women, or for the however many women, whatever. When you start talking about polyandry, women are not the women who are screaming polyandry. I don't hear none of them talking about taking care of providing for two husbands, right? So now you want two men to be faithful to you, and you're not even bringing provision to these two, right? And then procreation wise, if we're talking about for the sake of procreation, you don't really need polyandry for procreation, right? So it really not making sense. Also, like, I'm not really an advocate of polyamory. If people choose to do polyandry, if that's really what you want for your life, God bless you, may heaven smile upon you. Do what you want to do for your life. That's your life. I'm not really advocate for polyamory, only because I don't see those things dealing with the issues that we have, which is men settling down and actually committing to their wives and kids and raising healthy, families. Where another issue that we have in the black community is STDs running rampant. Some of the biggest carriers of HIV. So having sex with multiple partners on a mass scale, to me, is only contributing to those issues. So I am more of an advocate for polygyny more than anything else. That's why you really only see me talking about polygyny. I'm doing this video now to answer all these questions because y'all keep asking me. So now I'm putting it all out there. This is why. I'm telling you now. Now say this, and I'm gonna let it go. Polyandry would work in maybe a culture like Asia. You want to be your sister, you want to do polyandry, go to Asia. Why do I say that? Because in Asia, they had a one-child law. They had population control, and for years, a family could only bring one child into existence. So a lot.
Okay, so I'm going to end that now, and that's just about it. I mean, polyandry, it's just this dysfunction. Okay, all the way around. Okay, and you're not going to get much out of it. All right. Polyandry is just basically selfish women wanting the right to sleep with as many as men as they want. Polygamy really, as much as it was a detriment and a downfall to society because of the intrigue and strife and possible warfare that could come out of it, basically, that provided for women. Polyandry doesn't provide for men because the women are just looking for just sex. That's it. The right to have just as much sexual partners as men. That's it. Okay. Well, that's about it. I'm done. Hope this blesses you and you understand with the knowledge now that this is not worth trying out. Okay. Polygamy does not help the Black community now. Neither would polyandry or polyamory. It just makes situations worse, especially for the kids. All right. I'm done.